Hi, I don't even know what to call this, so here's the story of a Christmas tradition mixed with arson. So let's begin, or something like that. In the town of Gävle in Sweden, it's a Christmas tradition to build a big goat out of straw and put it in the town square. It's made over the course of a couple days at the beginning of Advent. So far, not illegal. Right? Unless someone burned it down, and it happened like a couple times. Or like a lot. The goat isn't made to be burned down. If you burn it down, you can be charged with arson and be put in prison for 3 months. But in the 55 years that a goat taller than 10 meters, which is really flammable and very minimally protected, has been placed in the town square, it's only survived 18 times, 2 of which had some damage caused. Here's a history of how it burned down every year. By the way, there's 2 goats, and when I say it, I'm referring to the larger one that's in the town square. And I forgot to include it in the script, and I spent too much time on this, so... 1966 and 1969, it burned down. In 1970, it was burned down just 6 hours after being built by 2 drunk teenagers. Not that it was built by 2 drunk teenagers, I just wanted to clarify. In 1971, it was smashed. In 1972, it collapsed. And in 1973, it was stolen by someone who put it in their back garden. He was then later arrested and sentenced to 2 years in prison. In 1974, it burned down. In 1975, it collapsed. In 1976, it was hit by a car, burned down again the following year. In 1978, it was kicked to pieces according to Wikipedia. In 1979, it burned down before it was even finished. It burned down in 1980 and 1982. In 1983, its legs were destroyed, and it burned down again in 1984. In 1985, a 2-meter-tall metal fence was installed along with soldiers from the nearby infantry regiment. It burned down. In 1986, it burned down. In 1987, it was fireproofed, but still burned down. In 1998, you could place a bet on whether the goat would survive or not, until it burned down in 1989. In 1991, it burned down. In 1992, both goats were burned down on the same day. One was rebuilt, and later burned down. In 1995, it was burned down. In 1997, it survived, but was damaged with fireworks. In 1998, it burned down, and in 1999, both goats burned down. In 2000, one of the goats was burned and the other thrown into a river. In 2001, an American was arrested for burning down the goat, after his friends told him it was a legal tradition. In 2002, it survived with some damage after a 22-year-old tried burning it down. It burned down in 2003 and 2004. In 2005, it was burned down by unknown arsonists dressed as Santa and the gingerbread man by a flaming arrow. One of the goats was burned in 2006, with the larger one shown here in the background. In 2007, one of the goats was toppled and burned 2 weeks later. In 2008, it burned down. In 2009, the webcams surveilling the goat were put out of use by a DOS attack before the goat burned down. In 2011, the goat was sprayed with water to create an ice barrier. It melted and both goats burned down. In 2012, it was burned down. In 2003, it was soaked with flame retardant. It burned down. In 2015, both goats burned down. In 2016, one of the goats was burned just hours before its 50th anniversary ceremony. The other was hit by a car. In 2017, security was tightened and there were no attempts to burn it down that year. And the most recent burning down of the goat in 2021. Both goats were burned 5 days apart. The goat burned down so many times despite the fire brigade being very close to where it's placed. I don't have an outro, but kind of weird, right?